3 books, and among those books, my favorite book is Prasiddha Panch, the famous 5. The author of this book is Enid Blyton. The story begins like this. In a city of England, there lived 3 siblings with their parents. They had gotten summer vacation where they were feeling very lazy to be in home, and they had nothing to play with. So they went to their aunt's island. In their aunt's island, they found George. George was a very unordinary person. Her real name is Georgina, but everyone used to call her George. She wouldn't like a person who would call her a god. She was a type of person who wouldn't make friends easily. But because of the kindness of all the siblings, she was willing to be the friend of them. George had an island. The island's name is Kirin Island. Let me tell you the history of Kirin Island. The history of Kirin Island begins like this. The owner of the island was the great-great-grandfather of Georgina. He was the owner of the island, but after the death of her great-great-grandfather, no one was willing to take that island. So it was given to George, aka Georgina. And George was willing to take all the siblings to her island. All of them traveled the island, enjoyed the island, but a strange thing happened. There was a ship. No one knew how did the ship came. The ship also had a history. Let me tell you the history of ship. Similarly, the ship was of George's great-great-grandfather. He had died from drowning from that ship. People believe that there is a lot of treasure, there is a lot of gold, diamond, a lot of things. That's why they all were willing to go there. They went there, they didn't find anything for a long time, but there was a last room. In that last room, Julian found something. It was a box. In that box, there was a diary, a pen, a lot of secrets of George's great-great-grandfather. There was a map too. Importantly, there was a map. They were shocked. They thought there would be treasure, gold, diamonds, and etc. But there was a map and the diary. It was all safe. But unfortunately, Uncle Quentin found the box. He was economically broke, so he frequently sold the box and got a lot of money. There is a good news that the famous 5 had already made a duplicate map. They followed that map. Georgina was very sad because Quentin uncle sold the box, and the strange person was willing to buy the island from a lot of decades. A first person to buy that island. But Georgina wasn't happy because it was her island. They didn't even ask her. That's why all the famous 5 and Georgina went there and searched for the treasure. Georgina, Anu and Timothy were willing to go down, but for some case, Julian and Dick were staying up. In the ground, they found a person holding a gun. The person was pointing to them. Any last wish? He was asking like that. The same person who bought that island, the same person who bought that box. But he was not having a lot of time. He was searching for treasure. That's why he left them. But Anu was very emotional person. She was crying. Georgina was very brave. That's why she was writing a letter. After finishing the letter, she gave it to Timothy. Timothy was running. Timothy was afraid, and he quickly ran into Julian's hands and he gave the letter to Julian. After seeing the letter, he frequently called police. But why? What was the letter for? In that letter, George had written like this: "Dear brothers, don't come here. Here is a criminal pointing a gun to us. Don't come here." They were shocked because in the end of the letter, George had written her name Georgina. That's why they were shocked. They frequently called police. After calling police did some investigation and found out the criminal. After finding the criminal was shocked. How could they do that? They were the children's, no? It was a pet. How could he do that? He was shocked. But the story ends here. From this story we can learn that unity is always better than physicality. At the end of the program, I would like to say something in Nepali. हामी विद्यार्थीहरूले हजुरहरूलाई किताब पढेर आफ्नो किताबको मेहनत पोखेर हजुरहरूलाई एकदम राम्रो र गर्व फिल भयो भन्ने हामी आशा गर्छौँ। र अन्त्यमा म भन्न गइरहेको छु, म फेरि रिपिट गर्न चाहन्छु, पहिला पनि रिपिट गरेको थिएँ फ्ल्यास डेमा, कि जहिले किताब र कलमको शक्ति तलवार भन्दा धेरै हुन्छ। र अन्त्यमा म केही दुई शब्द बोल्न गइरहेको छु। मानौँ कि हाम्रो किताबले बोल्न सक्थ्यो भने यो चाहिँ त्यस टपिक बारे रहेछ। प्रिय विद्यार्थी, चाहिन्छ तिमीलाई सफलताको बरसात, चाहिन्छ तिमीलाई सफलताको बरसात, तर कहिले पाउँदिन मैले तिम्रो साथ। मलाई छुन किन डराउँछौ?